My fellow Americans, not long ago I received a letter from a woman in the Midwest. She wrote, "Dear Mr. President, in my humble way I am writing to you about the crisis in Vietnam. I have a son who is now in Vietnam. My husband served in World War II. Our country was at war. But now, this time, it's just something that I don't understand. Why?" Well, I've tried to answer that question dozens of times and more in practically every state in this union. I've discussed it fully in Baltimore in April, in Washington in May, in San Francisco in June. And let me again now discuss it here in the East Room of the White House. Why must young Americans, born into a land exultant with hope and with golden promise, toil and suffer and sometimes die in such a remote and distant place? The answer, like the war itself, is not an easy one, but it echoes clearly from the painful lessons of half a century. 3 times in my lifetime, in 2 world wars and in Korea, Americans have gone to far lands to fight for freedom. We have learned at a terrible and a brutal cost that retreat does not bring safety, and weakness does not bring peace. And it is this lesson that has brought us to Vietnam. This is a different kind of war. There are no marching armies or solemn declarations. Some citizens of South Vietnam, at times with understandable grievances, have joined in the attack on their own government. But we must not let this mask the central fact that this is really war. It is guided by North Vietnam and it is spurred by Communist China. Its goal is to conquer the South, to defeat American power, and to extend the Asiatic dominion of communism. And there are great stakes in the balance. Most of the non-communist nations of Asia cannot by themselves and alone resist the growing might and the grasping ambition of Asian communism. Our power, therefore, is a very vital shield. If we are driven from the field in Vietnam, then no nation can ever again have the same confidence in American promise or in American protection. In each land, the forces of independence would be considerably weakened. And an Asia so threatened by communist domination would certainly imperil the security of the United States itself. We did not choose to be the guardians at the gate, but there is no one else. Nor would surrender in Vietnam bring peace, because we learned from Hitler at Munich that success only feeds the appetite of aggression. The battle would be renewed in one country and then another country, bringing with it perhaps even larger and crueler conflict, as we have learned from the lessons of history. Moreover, we are in Vietnam to fulfill one of the most solemn pledges of the American nation. 3 presidents, President Eisenhower, President Kennedy, and your present president, over 11 years have committed themselves and have promised to help defend this small and valiant nation. Strengthened by that promise, the people of South Vietnam have fought for many long years. Thousands of them have died. Thousands more have been crippled and scarred by war. And we just cannot now dishonor our word or abandon our commitment or leave those who believed us and who trusted us to the terror and repression and murder that would follow. This then, my fellow Americans, is why we're in Vietnam. What are our goals in that war-stained land? First, we intend to convince the communists that we cannot be defeated by force of arms or by superior power. They are not easily convinced. In recent months, they have greatly increased their fighting forces and their attacks and the numbers of incidents. I have asked the commanding general, General Westmoreland, what more he needs to meet this mounting aggression. He has told me, and we will meet his needs. I have today ordered to Vietnam the Air Mobile Division and certain other forces which will raise our fighting strength from 75,000 to 125,000 men almost immediately. Additional forces will be needed later, and they will be sent as requested. This will make it necessary to increase our active fighting forces by raising the monthly draft call from 17,000 over a period of time to 35,000 per month, and for us to step up our campaign for voluntary enlistments. After this past week of deliberations, I have concluded that it is not essential to order reserve units into service now. If that necessity should later be indicated, I will give the matter most careful consideration, and I will give the country due and adequate notice before taking such action, but only after full preparations. We have also discussed with the government of South Vietnam lately the steps that we will take to substantially increase their own effort, both on the battlefield and toward reform and progress in the villages. Ambassador Lodge is now formulating a new program to be tested upon his return to that area. I have directed Secretary Rusk and Secretary McNamara to be available immediately to the Congress to review with these committees, the appropriate congressional committees, what we plan to do in these areas. I have asked them to be able to answer the questions of any member of Congress. And Secretary McNamara, in addition, will ask the Senate Appropriations Committee to add a limited amount to present legislation to help meet part of this new cost until a supplemental measure is ready and hearings can be held when the Congress assembles in January. In the meantime, we will use the authority contained in the present defense appropriation bill under consideration to transfer funds in addition to the additional money that we will ask. These steps, like our actions in the past, are carefully measured to do what must be done to bring an end to aggression and a peaceful settlement. We do not want an expanding struggle with consequences that no one can foresee, nor will we bluster or bully or flaunt our power. But we will not surrender, and we will not retreat. For behind our American pledge lies the determination and resources, I believe, of all of the American nation. Second, Once the communists know, as we know, that a violent solution is impossible, then a peaceful solution is inevitable. We are ready now, as we have always been, to move from the battlefield to the conference table. I have stated publicly and many times, again and again, America's willingness to begin unconditional discussions with any government at any place at any time. 15 efforts have been made to start these discussions with the help of 40 nations throughout the world. But there has been no answer. But we are going to continue to persist, if persist we must, until death and desolation have led to the same conference table where others could now join us at a much smaller cost. I've spoken many times of our objectives in Vietnam. So has the government of South Vietnam. Hanoi has set forth its own proposals. We are ready to discuss their proposals and our proposals and any proposals of any government whose people may be affected. For we fear the meeting room no more than we fear the battlefield. And in this pursuit, we welcome and we ask for the concern and the assistance of any nation and all nations. And if the United Nations and its officials or any one of its 114 members can, by deed or word, private initiative or public action, bring us nearer an honorable peace, then they will have the support and the gratitude of the United States of America. I have directed Ambassador Goldberg to go to New York today and to present immediately to Secretary General Utah a letter from me requesting that all the resources and the energy and the immense prestige of the United Nations be employed to find ways to halt aggression and to bring peace in Vietnam. I made a similar request at San Francisco a few weeks ago. Because we do not seek the destruction of any government, nor do we covet a foot of any territory. But we insist, and we will always insist, that the people of South Vietnam shall have the right of choice, the right to shape their own destiny in free elections in the South or throughout all Vietnam under international supervision. And they shall not have any government imposed upon them by force and terror, so long as we can prevent it. This was the purpose of the 1954 agreements, which the communists have now cruelly shattered. And if the machinery of those agreements was tragically weak, its purposes still guide our action. And as battle rages, we will continue as best we can to help the good people of South Vietnam enrich the condition of their life, to feed the hungry and to tend the sick and teach the young and shelter the homeless and help the farmer to increase his crops and the worker to find a job. It is an ancient but still terrible irony that while many leaders of men create division in pursuit of grand ambitions, the children of man are really united in the simple, elusive desire for a life of fruitful and rewarding toil. As I said in Johns Hopkins at Baltimore, I hope that one day we can help all the people of Asia toward that desire. And Eugene Black has made great progress since my appearance in Baltimore in that direction. Not as the price of peace, for we are ready always to bear a more painful cost, but rather as a part of our obligations of justice toward our fellow man. And let me also add now a personal note. I do not find it easy to send the flower of our youth, our finest young men, into battle. I have spoken to you today of the divisions and the forces and the battalions and the units. But I know them all, every one. I have seen them in 1,000 streets of 100 towns in every state in this Union, working and laughing and building and filled with hope and life. And I think I know, too, how their mothers weep and how their families sorrow. And this is the most agonizing and the most painful duty of your president. And there's something else, too. When I was young, poverty was so common that we didn't know it had a name. And education was something that you had to fight for. And water was really life itself. I have now been in public life 35 years, more than 3 decades. And in each of those 35 years, I have seen good men and wise leaders struggle to bring the blessings of this land to all of our people. And now, I am the president. It is now my opportunity to help every child get an education, to help every Negro and every American citizen have an equal opportunity, to help every family get a decent home, and to help bring healing to the sick and dignity to the old. As I have said before, that is what I've lived for. That's what I've wanted all my life since I was a little boy. And I do not want to see all those hopes and all those dreams of so many people for so many years now drowned in the wasteful ravages of cruel wars. And I'm going to do all I can do to see that that never happens. But I also know, as a realistic public servant, that as long as there are men who hate and destroy, we must have the courage to resist, or we'll see it all. All that we have built, all that we hope to build, all of our dreams for freedom, all will be swept away on the flood of conquest. So, too, this shall not happen. We will stand in Vietnam. Now, what America is and was and hopes to stand forth as an important national asset, telling the truth to this world, telling an exciting story, is the voice of America. I classify this assignment in the front rank of importance to the freedom of the world. And that is why today I am proud to announce to you the name of the man who will direct the voice of America. He is a man whose voice and whose face and whose mind is known to this country and to most of the entire world. His name is John Chancellor. Mr. Chancellor was born 38 years ago in Chicago. For more than 15 years, he has been with the news department of the National Broadcasting Company. During that time, he has covered the world in Vienna, London, Moscow, New York, Brussels, Berlin, and Washington. Since 1964, he has been with you, one of the White House correspondents. This, I think, is the first time in the history of the Voice of America that a working newspaperman, a respected commentator, and experienced independent reporter has been given the responsibility of leadership and direction in this vital enterprise. I think he understands the challenges that are present and the achievements that are possible. And I am satisfied that the Voice of America will be an imaginative, competent, reliable, and always truthful hands. Stand up, John, will you, please? The President has few responsibilities of greater importance or greater consequence to the country's future than the constitutional responsibility of nominating justices for the Supreme Court of the United States. I am happy today here in the East Room to announce that the distinguished American who was my first choice for the position now vacant on the Supreme Court has agreed to accept this call to this vital duty. I will very shortly this afternoon send to the United States Senate my nomination of the Honorable Abe Fortas to be an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court. For many, many years, I have regarded Mr. Fortas as one of this nation's most able and most respected and most outstanding citizens. A scholar, a profound thinker, a lawyer of superior ability, and a man of humane and deeply compassionate feelings toward his fellow man, a champion of our liberties. That opinion is shared by the legal profession and by the bar of this country, by members of the Congress and by the leaders of business and labor and other sectors of our national life. Mr. Fortas has, as you know, told me on numerous occasions in the last 20 months that he would not be an applicant or a candidate or would not accept any appointment to any public office. And this is, I guess, as it should be, for in this instance, the job has sought the man. Mr. Fortas agrees that the duty and the opportunity of service on the highest court of this great country is not a call that any citizen can reject. So I am proud for the country that he has this morning accepted this appointment and will serve his country as an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court. I will be glad to take your questions now for hearing. A little water here.
Mr. President, in the light of the decisions on Vietnam, which you've just announced, is the United States prepared with additional plans should North Vietnam escalate its military effort? And how do you anticipate that the Chinese Communists will react to what you've announced today?
I do not want to speculate on the reactions of other people. This nation is prepared and will always be prepared to protect its national interests.
Well, you talked about a timetable in connection with Vietnam. You have said, and you repeated today, that the United States will not be defeated, will not grow tired. Donald Johnson, National Commander of the American Legion, went over to Vietnam in the spring and later called on you. He told White House reporters that he that he could imagine the war over there going on for 5, 6, or 7 years. Have you thought of that possibility, sir? And do you think the American people ought to think of that possibility?
Yes, I think the American people ought to understand that there's no quick solution to the problem that we face there. I would not want to prophesy or predict whether it would be a matter of months or years or decades. I do not know that we had any accurate timetable on how long it would take to bring victory in World War I. I don't think anyone really knew whether it would be 2 years or 4 years or 6 years to meet with success in World War II. I do think our cause is just. I do think our purposes and objectives are beyond any question. I do believe that America will stand united behind her men that are there. And I plan, as long as I am president, to see that our forces are strong enough to protect our national interests, and our right hand constantly protecting that interest with our military, and that our diplomatic and political negotiations are constantly attempting to find some solution that would substitute words for bombs. And as I have said so many times, if anyone questions our good faith and will ask us to meet them to try to reason this matter out, they will find us at the appointed place, at the appointed time, in the proper chair.
President, there's a representative of the government of Ghana in Hanoi now talking with the foreign minister of North Vietnam about the war in Vietnam. Do you see any indication of that something good will come of these talks?
We are always hopeful that every effort in that direction will meet with success. We welcome those efforts, as we welcome the Commonwealth proposal, as we welcome Mr. Davis' visit, as we welcome the Indian suggestion, as we've welcomed the efforts of the distinguished Prime Minister of Great Britain and others from time to time. As I just said, I hope that every member of the United Nations that has any idea, any plan, any program, any suggestion, that they will not let them go unexplored.
I'm sorry. What you have outlined as your program for now, it would seem that you feel that we can have guns and butter for the foreseeable future. Do you have any idea right now, though, that down the road a piece, the American people may have to face the problem of guns or butter?
I have not the slightest doubt, but whatever it's necessary to face, the American people will face. I think that all of us know that we are now in the 52nd month of the prosperity that's been unequaled in this nation. And I see no reason for declaring a national emergency, and I rejected that course of action earlier today when I made my decision. I cannot foresee what next year, the following year would hold. I only know that the Americans will do whatever is necessary, and at the moment we enjoy the good fortune of having an unparalleled period of prosperity with us, and this government's going to do all it can to see it continue. Mr. Lisgore?
Then can you tell us whether the missile sites in North Vietnam that were bombed yesterday were manned by Russians, and whether or not the administration has a policy about Russian technicians in North Vietnam?
No, we have no information as to how they were manned. We cannot speak with any authority on that matter. We made the decision that we felt our national interest required, and as those problems present themselves, we will face up to them.
So I wonder if you've had any communications from Chiang Kai-shek that he's ready to go to war with you.
We have communicated with most of the friendly nations of the world the last few days, and we have received from them responses that have been encouraging. I would not want to go into any individual response here, but I would say that I have indicated to all of the friendly nations what our problems were there, the decision that confronted us and ask for their help and for their suggestions. Mr. Roberts.
Mr. President, given the Russian military involvement or apparent involvement on the side of Hanoi on the one side and the dialogue which Mr. Harriman has been conducting for you on the other, as well as the disarmament talks in Geneva at the moment, could you tell us whether you believe this war, as you now call it, can be contained in this corner of Southeast Asia without involving a U.S.-Soviet confrontation?
We would hope very much that we could, and we will do nothing to provoke that confrontation that we can avoid. As you know, immediately after I assumed the presidency, I immediately sent messages to the Soviet Union. We have had frequent exchange of views by letter and by conversation with Mr. Gromyko and Mr. Dobrynin, and we are doing nothing to provoke the Soviet Union. We are very happy that they agreed to resume the disarmament conference. I went to some length to try to extend ourselves to make the proposals that I would hope would meet with the acceptance of the peoples of the world. We would like to believe that there could be some success flow from this conference, although we haven't been too successful. I know of nothing that we have in mind that should arouse the distrust or provoke any violence on the part of the Soviet Union.
Does the fact that you're sending additional forces to Vietnam imply any change in the existing policy of relying mainly on the South Vietnamese to carry out offensive operations and using American forces to guard American installations and to act as an emergency backup?
It does not imply any change in policy whatever. It does not imply any change of objective.
Would you like to see the United Nations now move formally as an organization to attempt to achieve a settlement in Vietnam?
I have made very clear in my San Francisco speech my hope that the Secretary General, under his wise leadership, would explore every possibility that might lead to a solution of this matter. In my letter to the Secretary General this morning, which Ambassador Goldberg will deliver later in the day, I reiterate my hopes and my desires, and I urge upon him that he, if he agrees, that he undertake new efforts in this direction. Ambassador Goldberg understands the challenge. We spent the weekend talking about the potentialities and the possibilities, our hopes and our dreams. And I believe that we will have an able advocate and a searching negotiator who I would hope would someday find success. Ms. Craig.
Mr. President, what are the borders of your power to conduct a war? At what point might you have to ask Congress for a declaration?
I don't know. That would depend on the circumstances. I can't pinpoint the date on the calendar or the hour of the day. I have to ask Congress for their judgments and for their decisions almost every hour of the day. One of the principal duties of the office of President is to maintain constant consultation. I have talked to, I guess, more than 50 members of Congress in the last 24 hours. I have submitted myself to their questions, and the Secretary of State and the Secretary of Defense will meet with them tomorrow if they're ready to answer any question that they may need. Up to now, we have had ample authority, excellent cooperation, a united Congress behind us, and as near as I could tell from my meetings last night with the leaders and from my meetings today with the distinguished chairman of the committee and the members of both parties, we all met as Americans, united and determined to stand as one.
In this connection, however, last night one of the leading governors of the Republicans said some rather strong things. Governor Hatfield of Oregon said the most recent escalation of action in Vietnam is moving all the people of the earth closer to World War III, and we have no moral right to commit the world, and especially our own people, to World War III unilaterally or by the decision of a few experts. This seems to imply rather strong criticism of present policies. Do you care to express any reaction?
Yes, I don't interpret it that way. I think there are dangers in escalation. I don't think I have any right to commit the whole world to World War III. I'm doing everything I know how to avoid it. But retreat is not necessarily the best way to avoid it. I have outlined to you what I think is the best policy. I would hope that Governor Hatfield and the other governors, when they understand what we are doing and when I have a chance to submit myself to their questioning and to counsel with them, would share my view. I know they have the same concern for the American people and the people of the world as I do. And I don't believe our objectives will be very different. As a matter of fact, I asked the governors if they could to come here at the conclusion of their deliberations, and I will have my plane go to Minneapolis tomorrow, and I believe 43 of the 48 have indicated a desire to come here. I will give them all the information I can, confidential, secret, and otherwise, because I have great respect for them and their judgments and their opinions and their leadership, and it's going to be necessary in this effort. I will also have the Secretary of State and Secretary of Defense review with them all their plans and answer any of their inquiries, and we hope resolve any doubts they might have. Miss Nancy?
After the week of deliberations on Vietnam, how do you feel in the context of your office we always hear is the loneliest in the world?
Nancy, I'm sorry, but the cameras and the microphone, I didn't get your question. Raise the microphone up where I can hear, and you camera boys give her a chance.
Mr. President, I say, after the week of deliberations on Vietnam, how do you feel personally, particularly in the context that we always hear that your office is the loneliest in the world?
Well, I don't agree with that. I don't guess there's anyone in this country that has as much understanding and as much help and as many experts and as good advice and many people of both parties trying to help them as they are me. Of course, I admit I need it more than anybody else. Nancy, I haven't been lonely the last few days. I've had lots of callers.
Mr. President, would you be willing to permit direct negotiations with the Viet Cong forces in South Vietnam?
We have stated time and time again that we would negotiate with any government, any time, any place. The Viet Cong would have no difficulty in being represented and having their views presented if Hanoi, for a moment, decides that she wants to cease aggression. And I would not think that would be an insurmountable problem at all. I think that could be worked out. Mike?
President, to shift the subject just a moment, does your appointment of Mr. Gardner suggest that there will be less interest now in the creation of a separate Department of Education?
No, not at all. My appointment of Mr. Gardner suggests that I looked over America to find the very best man that I could to lead us forward to become an educated nation where every child obtains all the education that he can take, and where the health of every citizen is his prime concern, and where the Social Security system is brought to needs of the 20th century. And after canvassing some 40 or 50 possibilities, I concluded that Mr. Gardner was the best man I could get, and I asked his board to relieve him of his duties and release him to the government so that he could furnish the dynamic leadership officially that he has been furnishing unofficially to us. And he told me yesterday morning that he was prepared to do that, and I've remembered that I hadn't asked him what state he lived in, where his permanent residence was, so I put it on the nomination paper, or what party he belonged to. And he rather well, maybe somewhat hesitatingly said, I'm a Republican. I don't mean that his hesitating meant any particular significance. But I was happy that he said that, because a good many Republicans voted for me, and I don't want to be partial or partisan in this administration. And I like to see leadership of that kind come from the Republican ranks. And so I told him that if he had no objection, I would announce very promptly his appointment. And I hope that he would give us American leadership without regard to party, and that's what I think he will do, and I believe all the nation will be proud of him as we are of Secretary Celebrezzi.
Thank you, Mr. President.